The land of Obidịke had never known suffering like this. The once thriving kingdom was now cursed, rivers turned to blood, crops withered, and sickness spread like wildfire. Women could no longer bear children, and the sound of wailing filled the air. The people knew what this meant. The gods were angry. It all began with the breaking of the Oath of Virginity, a sacred law that had kept the kingdom in the gods' favor for generations. Every maiden swore before Allah the Mother Earth that she would remain pure until marriage. Any maiden who broke the oath was banished, and any man who defied a maiden faced public execution. But the unthinkable had happened. News spread like harmattan fire. The town crier's voice rang through the streets. The gods have spoken. The oath has been broken, and the one who has defied herself is none other than Ahunna, the daughter of our great king Eze Nnabuike. The people gasped, "The king's only child? How could it be?" Some shook their heads in disbelief. Ahunna was known to be pure, obedient, and respectful of traditions. Others, however, whispered that the gods never lied. If the kingdom was suffering, then someone had brought it upon them. Inside the palace, Queen Ulomma fell to her knees before her husband. "My king, my love, I swear on my life, Ahunna is innocent." King Nnabuike's face was hard as stone, his heart torn between duty and love. He knew what the law demanded, but how could he condemn his daughter without proof? The council of elders gathered. Dibia Osondu, the kingdom's powerful seer, was summoned. He closed his eyes, lifted his staff, and called upon the gods. After a long silence, he spoke. "The gods say she is guilty." A wave of horror spread through the palace. Ahunna trembled as her father's gaze met hers. "Father, I have done nothing wrong," she pleaded. But in the eyes of the people, her fate was already sealed. The next morning, Ahunna was led to the shrine of Allah. Her hands were bound behind her back, and her feet dragged through the dust as two palace guards flanked her sides. The people gathered to watch. Some wept for her, others cursed her name. Dibia Osondu stood before the crowd, his staff raised high. "Ahunna, daughter of Eze Nnabuike, you are accused of breaking the oath of virginity. Do you deny it?" Ahunna's voice was steady, but her eyes were filled with tears. "I deny it. I have never known a man." Gasps rippled through the crowd. "Then prove your innocence," the Dibia declared. He turned to a young maiden holding a small clay pot filled with sacred water. "Drink from the water of truth. If you speak falsely, your body will swell, and you will die before sunset." Ahunna's hands trembled as she took the pot. The entire kingdom held its breath. She drank. Minutes passed, then hours. The sun began to set, and Ahunna still stood strong. A murmur spread through the crowd. "She lives. The gods have spared her." Queen Ulomma fell to her knees, sobbing in relief. But Dibia Osondu's face darkened. "The gods are not yet satisfied," he said. "Her innocence must be proven another way." That night, King Nnabuike sat in his chambers, his head in his hands. He could not bear to lose his daughter. But if the gods' anger did not subside, more people would die. Then a royal guard rushed in. "My king, we have captured a man." The king lifted his head. "Who?" The guard hesitated. "A man who claims to know the truth about the oath of virginity." The palace fell silent. King Nnabuike rose from his throne, his face unreadable. "Bring him in," he commanded. The palace door swung open, and two guards dragged a man into the hall. His clothes were torn, his face bruised, and his lips trembled as he fell to his knees before the king. The people gathered, their whispers filling the air. "Who are you?" the king asked. The man lifted his head. "I am Ikemefuna, my king, a servant of the house of Chief Okonkwo." A murmur spread through the hall. Chief Okonkwo was a powerful nobleman, a rival of the king's family. "What do you know of the oath of virginity?" the king pressed. Ikemefuna swallowed hard. I know that Princess Ahunna is innocent. Gasps filled the chamber. Queen Ulomma clutched her chest. Ahunna's eyes widened with hope. Speak, the king ordered. If you lie, you will die where you kneel. The servant took a shaky breath. It was a plot, my king. A plot to destroy your family. Silence fell. A plot? Ikemefuna nodded. Chief Okonkwo and his son Obika swore to bring you down. They knew that accusing your daughter of breaking the oath would weaken your rule. The people would turn against you, and when the gods became angry, they would demand a new ruler. King Nnabuike's hands tightened into fists. Are you saying this was all a lie? Yes, my king, Ikemefuna cried. Obika spread the rumors. He bribed the town crier to announce it before the people, and Dibia Osondu, he was paid to declare the gods' judgment against Ahunna. A deep growl rose in the king's throat. The people gasped in horror. Lies! Dibia Osondu roared. This man is a traitor. I serve the gods, not men. But Ikemefuna turned to the crowd, his voice desperate. Then why did he refuse to let Ahunna drink from the water of truth at once? Why did he demand more proof when the gods have already shown her innocence? The crowd murmured. People looked at each other. The king's hands trembled with fury. Where is Obika? The king demanded. The guards hesitated. He has fled, my king. A deadly silence filled the hall. Then the king rose from his throne, his voice like thunder. Send out my warriors. Chief Okonkwo and his son must be captured before sunrise. Odogwu, the commander of the king's warriors, bowed. It will be done, my king. As the warriors stormed out of the palace, the people erupted in shouts. Some cursed the traitors, others wept for Ahunna, their hearts heavy with guilt for believing the lie. Ahunna knelt before her father, tears streaming down her face. Father, King Nnabuike stepped forward and pulled her into his arms. My daughter, forgive me. His voice cracked. I should have believed you. Queen Ulomma joined them, her sobs filling the air. But as the night deepened, one thought burned in the king's mind. This betrayal was deeper than he had imagined, and he would not rest until justice was served. The warriors of Obidịke rode through the night, their torches burning like angry stars against the darkness. The air was thick with tension, and the pounding of horse hooves echoed across the land. Odogwu, the commander of the royal warriors, led the charge. His face was hard with determination. Chief Okonkwo and Obika would not escape justice. By dawn, they reached Okonkwo's compound. The warriors stormed the gates, breaking down doors, dragging men from their hiding places. But the chief and his son were nowhere to be found. Odogwu grabbed one of the servants. Where is your master? The man trembled. They fled in the night towards the forbidden forest. The warriors exchanged glances. The forbidden forest was a place of mystery and danger. No one who entered its depths ever returned the same. But Odogwu did not hesitate. We ride. Back in the palace, King Nnabuike sat with his head in his hands. The betrayer had shaken him deeply. Dibia Osondu, now exposed as a traitor, had been stripped of his title and thrown into the palace dungeon. The people demanded his public execution, but the king had other plans. He would force Osondu to confess his crime before the gods. Ahunna sat beside her mother, her hands still trembling. Though her innocence had been proven, the wounds of betrayal ran deep. She had come so close to death, so close to losing everything. Queen Ulomma turned to her husband. What if they escape? What if they return with more evil? The king's jaw tightened. Odogwu will not fail. Deep in the forbidden forest, Chief Okonkwo and Obika stumbled through the tangled roots and thick undergrowth. Fear was in their eyes. They had spent their lives seeking power, but now they were no better than hunted animals. We should have killed Ahunna instead, Obika panted. Then no one would have questioned it. His father glared at him. Fool, you do not kill a king's daughter unless you are prepared to take the throne the next day. Obika's face darkened. Then what do we do now? Before his father could answer, A sound cut through the forest, the distant call of warriors. The king's men were close. Okonkwo's breath came fast. We must keep moving. But as they turned, they came face to face with an old woman. She was dressed in rags, her eyes cloudy with age, but there was something unsettling about her. "Lost men," she murmured, "you run from death, but death follows." Obika sneered. "Get out of our way, old woman." She only smiled. "The gods have seen your evil, and they are waiting." A cold chill passed through them, and before they could take another step, the sound of approaching warriors filled the air. There was nowhere left to run. Chief Okonkwo and Obika turned sharply, their breath heavy with fear. The sound of warriors crashing through the undergrowth grew louder. They had reached the end of their escape. Odogwu, the commander of the royal warriors, emerged first, his spear raised. Behind him, his men fanned out, their blades gleaming in the dim morning light. "Surrender," Odogwu commanded, his voice hard as iron. Okonkwo straightened, trying to mask his fear. "I am a noble man. You dare raise weapons against me?" Odogwu's expression did not change. "You are a traitor." He turned to his men. "Bind them." Obika lunged forward in desperation, pulling a concealed dagger from his robes. But he was too slow. Odogwu struck first. His spear sliced through Obika's arm, sending the dagger clattering to the ground. Obika howled in pain, clutching his bleeding limb as two warriors seized him. Okonkwo tried to flee, but three warriors tackled him to the ground. The struggle was over. "Take them back to the king," Odogwu ordered. As the warriors tied their hands and dragged them away, the old woman who had appeared before them watched in silence. A knowing smile played on her lips. "The gods have seen," she murmured, "and justice will be done." The palace courtyard was filled with people when the warriors returned with the prisoners. The crowd roared in anger at the sight of the traitors, throwing stones and cursing their names. King Nnabuike sat on his great stool, his expression unreadable. Beside him, Queen Ulomma held Ahunna's hand tightly, her face pale with emotion. Dibia Osondu, still shackled in the palace dungeon, had already confessed his part in the betrayal. Now, all that remained was for the masterminds, Chief Okonkwo and Obika, to face judgment. The king's voice rang across the courtyard. "You stand before the gods and the people of Obidịke. You have lied, betrayed, and brought suffering upon this land. What do you have to say for yourselves?" Chief Okonkwo lifted his chin, his pride refusing to break. "I did what was necessary. You rule as if you are a god, Nnabuike, but even kings must fall." A gasp ran through the crowd. The audacity of his words shocked even the elders. The king's eyes darkened. "And for your greed, my daughter nearly died. The land suffered. The gods turned against us." Obika, now weak from blood loss, whimpered, "Please have mercy." Odogwu stepped forward. "Did you have mercy when you framed an innocent woman? Did you have mercy when you bribed the priest to lie?" The crowd shouted in agreement. The king stood. "The gods will have the final say." He motioned to the royal guards. "Take them to the shrine of Allah. Let the gods decide their fate." The crowd erupted into cheers and chants. Justice was near, but no one knew what the gods had in store for the traitors. As the sun set over Obidịke, the people gathered at the shrine of Allah, the Mother Earth. Torches flickered, casting shadows on the sacred stones, and the air was thick with the scent of burning incense. This was the place where justice was sealed, where the gods spoke without mercy. Chief Okonkwo and Obika stood bound in the center of the shrine, their faces streaked with sweat and fear. Before them, Dibia Ume, the new high priest chosen after Osondu's disgrace, lifted his staff. "The gods have been angered," he declared. "Only their judgment can cleanse this land." King Nnabuike stepped forward, his gaze cold. "They have broken the oath of virginity, brought false judgment upon an innocent woman, and plunged this kingdom into suffering. Let the gods decide their fate." The people roared in agreement. Dibia Ume raised a calabash filled with the sacred water of truth. "Let them drink." If they are innocent, the gods will spare them. If guilty, they will not leave this shrine alive. A deep silence fell over the crowd. Obika trembled as the priest handed him the calabash. His father shot him a warning look, but his hands shook so badly that the water spilled over the rim. The people gasped. Spilling the water before drinking was seen as a sign of a guilty heart. "Drink!" Dibia Ume commanded. Obika lifted the calabash to his lips and gulped the water down. Then, a moment later, his body stiffened. His eyes bulged as he clutched his throat, struggling to breathe. A terrible scream tore from his ribs as his skin turned dark and his veins swelled like ropes beneath his flesh. The people shrieked in horror. Obika collapsed to the ground, writhing in agony. Foam spewed from his mouth. Within moments, he was dead. A heavy silence settled over the shrine. Chief Okonkwo stood frozen, his face drained of color. "The gods have spoken," Dibia Ume declared. "Guilty." The people murmured. Some nodded in satisfaction. Others shuddered at the power of the gods. Then the Dibia turned to Chief Okonkwo. "Now, you." A single bead of sweat rolled down Okonkwo's forehead, but he refused to show fear. He took the calabash, lifted it to his lips, and drank. The people watched in silence, waiting for the gods' judgment. A moment passed, then another. Nothing happened. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Was he innocent? Had the gods spared him? Then a strong wind swept through the shrine, blowing out the torches. The earth shook beneath their feet. The people screamed as a voice deep, ancient, and angry filled the air. "He is guilty, but his punishment shall not be quick." The wind grew stronger, and before their eyes, Okonkwo fell to his knees, his body trembling. His skin began to wrinkle, his hair turned white, and his back bent as though a great weight had fallen upon him. Within moments, he had aged 50 years. His voice came out in a hoarse whisper. "No, no." The once proud chief was now a weak, frail old man, his strength stolen by the gods. Dibia Ume raised his hands. "The gods have condemned him to live in shame. He will wander the land, a shadow of his former self, until the day death finally claims him." The people gasped. This punishment was worse than death. To live as a cursed man, rejected by the land he was sought to rule. The guards unbound him, and he fell to the ground, too weak to stand. No one helped him. The people stepped away, their eyes filled with fear and disgust. King Nnabuike turned to Odogwu. "Banish him. He is no longer welcome in Obidịke." Odogwu nodded and signaled his men. Without a word, they dragged the broken old man away, leaving him to the mercy of the wilderness. Justice had been served. Back in the royal palace, the air was lighter, as if a great darkness had lifted. The people rejoiced, knowing that the kingdom was safe once more. Ahunna stood before her father, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for believing in me." King Nnabuike placed his hands on her shoulders. "I failed you once, my daughter. I will never fail you again." Queen Ulomma joined them, pulling her daughter into a tight embrace. The family was whole again. Outside, the people sang songs of victory, celebrating the return of peace. The crops would grow once more, the rivers would clear, and the kingdom of Obidịke would thrive again.